Good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for braving our very first winter snow, at least down south here. It's our first snow of the year, so thanks. Hope everyone had a safe drive and are ready for a great day. It's great to have everybody across the state joining us together to learn about some really exciting stuff that we're studying here in Wisconsin. I just want to give a special shout out and thanks to our CISAs. They've been incredible partners in making this day happen. So thank you so much for that. We are going to be talking today about a really important continuous improvement strategy that we've been digging into. I wanted to let you know that State Superintendent Evers and Governor-elect Evers is very excited about this day today and is incredibly supportive of this work. And also he sends his thanks for your attention today. So one of the things that we've been doing is kind of studying what's happening across the nation and some of the research that's been coming out on continuous improvement and what we can do to really meet the needs of all of our learners across Wisconsin. And so today we are going to be digging into one of those things. And so as you can see, I have a slide up on the screen that really talks about this in its very most simple terms. And it really says that we want to make sure that once we have selected rigorous student academic standards, and particularly in literacy and math, we're going to talk about today, we need to make sure that we then select high quality standards aligned materials. That seems pretty obvious. Doesn't seem like anything that's real rocket science there. Then we also need to make sure that the professional learning that we're providing to implement those standards is really focused on those materials so that our teachers are implementing the standards fully. And so that's just actually in simple terms what we're going to be doing today. We know that it's a lot more complicated than it seems really right on the surface. And so we're going to be digging into that today. We're going to be talking about equity. We're going to be talking about how important it is to be able to get all of these things right, along with the many other things that we know that you do in your schools and districts. So we really see this as not something new. We really see it as the next step in standards implementation. You guys realize it's been almost a decade since we adopted new literacy and mathematics standards in the state of Wisconsin? It's really hard to believe. We've been working really hard on implementation of those new standards, lots of PD around the state, around the critical instructional shifts and what teachers need to be doing differently to make sure that we're really raising the rigor to meet those standards for all of our students. But one of the things that we're finding is that the materials that we have available right now are really uneven across the state of Wisconsin and across the country. And so one of the things we started to look into is how we can make sure that we look at this in an equitable way and make sure that all of our teachers and all of our students are having access to high quality stuff and high quality PD for all of our teachers. And so this research brief that we have here, everybody got in their email reminding them of today a link to our website that has some information about what we're going to be talking about today. And one of the things that you'll find there is this research brief. And it has a small collection of some of the amazing research that started to come out nationwide around this continuous improvement strategy. And so each one of these statements that you'll find on there has a live link to the full study or the full piece of research if you want to do a little digging and a little reading. But one of the things that we're finding out is that although in Wisconsin we spent a ton of time really working on the standards and really learning about the standards, in some other places, they coupled that with making sure that teachers had high quality standards aligned instructional materials. And then the PD focusing on those materials really helped those teachers better understand the standards themselves. So it helped them understand those shifts. It's a little less theoretical and much more concrete. And so there's research coming out to say that making that shift in PD is having dramatic effects in our teachers' understanding and the support for our teachers and what we're doing. And so we're pretty excited about that. There's research coming out to say this school improvement strategy is getting better outcomes than some of the other things that we've done along the way, even better than things like lower class sizes. And I'm going to talk a little bit about equity and its impact on equity in a minute. So I wanted to start today with just a brief story about my first job. So my first job in the public schools, as many of you maybe had an experience, walked into your room, maybe got keys, maybe got a high five, maybe there were some materials if you were lucky in your room, maybe some chairs, maybe some tables. That's how it was for me. There were a few things in a closet that I could pick from. I had no instructional materials. I had no even pacing guide or framework, and I had no standards at the time at all. And so it was like, have fun. And so brand new teacher that I had a lot of energy, I had a lot of excitement, and I worked really, really hard. And I think I did a pretty good job. I'm not sure I did a good job. I wondered often if the things I was choosing to focus on, if they were the right things. I was always wondering if I was choosing the same thing as the people next door to me, and I was wondering if the teacher next year that got my kids, if they were as prepared or better prepared or less prepared than my neighbors sending their kids to the next grade. There was a lot of hit or miss. So then I became a principal and I started to look more big picture across what was happening. And I worked with some of the most amazing teachers on the planet. I loved them. They were incredibly hardworking. They were doing great things for kids. But we also could see how there was, even when good stuff was happening every day, there were incredible holes happening in certain places. Some classrooms we had big holes in one space, in other classrooms we had big holes in other places, and in some classrooms whole entire sections of curriculum were being missed. And so while those teachers were working as hard as teachers can possibly work, you know, as a group we were not really getting it done for our kids because there was just things that were being missed with that kind of non-systematic way of determining what was going to be going on. Eventually standards came along and we had some instructional materials, not really sure if they were aligned at the time. When it came to DPI, it was when we had first adopted new literacy and mathematics standards. And like I mentioned, we spent a ton of time really supporting the field in doing that. And right away, we all know what happened with the publishers once we got new standards. They all created these very nice shiny stickers, put them on their old textbooks and said, these are aligned to the new standards. And so we kind of all knew that they weren't, and there really wasn't stuff out there that was. And so lots of districts continued and schools continued to use materials that were aligned or not to the old standards, and we're trying to fill in the gaps and trying to do the best with what they had. But we're learning now that we need to start to rethink that. I mean, the first thing to know is, and some people don't know this, there's actually some really good stuff out there now that's really high quality and it's aligned to our new standards. And that's pretty awesome. The other thing is we now have some tools that can help us know that. And a lot of people don't know about the tools that are out there. And so we're going to be spending some time learning about that today. And so I find it very interesting that we ask teachers to do an incredibly difficult job. But oftentimes, instead of giving them the support that they need, we leave them on their own to find materials every night when they're already tired from a long day to figure out what they're going to do tomorrow, or give them nothing. They have to build everything from scratch, or at best, sometimes they have misaligned or poor quality materials that they have to spend an enormous amount of time looking for new materials to supplement and fill in the gaps for what's happening. And really, the bottom line is teachers deserve great materials that can help get kids excited and ready to learn. And I believe we have failed in doing that. It's really important that teachers are given the tools of their profession so that they can focus on what's really important. And that is to really focus their time, energy, and creativity to bring those lessons to life and really find ways to do what they do best, which is inspiring their students and helping them to learn and grow. And we need to make sure that the professional development is supporting the materials that we're asking teachers to use every day, because no matter what level students are, we need to be working together to make sure that it's working for them. And so I've used the term instructional materials a lot, and people sometimes ask me, what are you talking about when you say that? And so I have a definition here of high quality instructional materials, really looking at all of the materials we use in our core instruction to really guide what we're doing with students every day. So that can include textbooks, texts, digital resources, and other instructional content. And when we say high quality, we want to make sure it's aligned to the K-12 standards, and we want to make sure that's both horizontally and vertically. And when we talk about high quality, we want to make sure it's not just a high quality isolated lesson that doesn't connect to the next high quality lessons. We want to make sure they're aligned all together. And we want to support teachers with those materials and growing their own knowledge, both content and pedagogical. And then we want to make sure that those materials are able to be scaffolded so we can help students that are behind get up to grade level, the grade level text that we're using with them, and are engaging for students and are able to be differentiated where possible. So I just want to take a minute here to talk a little bit about what this is, what we're going to be talking about today, and what it is not. So I'm going to start with what it is not. So if you've listened to me talk so far and any of these ideas have popped into your head, I want to make sure that you know that this is not something that we're talking about. So some people think when we talk about having instructional materials for our teachers, we're going to be scripting them. And so I'm here to tell you that we're not interested in that. I mean, I said high quality, right? So that by definition for me is not high quality. This is not the state generating an approved list of materials. We're not doing that. We have no interest in doing that. This is your choice locally, and it's going to stay your choice locally. We have no interest in taking away local control. What we do want to do is help in making the best decisions that you can. Some people take this to mean we're trying to deprofessionalize teachers. Actually, I really see it as just the opposite. I kind of think it's not really honoring the profession of teaching when we ask them to do a job and we don't give them the tools that they need to be able to do the work that they're doing. And so this is not an effort to deprofessionalize or take away any kind of control of teachers. I get pretty excited about this. This is a pretty important improvement strategy, I believe. And so some people say, wow, Briggs, when you talk about that, you kind of sound like you think this is a magic bullet. Well, I think by the end of the day today, you're going to get a sense that this is, one, not a magic bullet, and it's going to be really, really hard work. And, you know, purchasing high quality materials is one step, and it's an important step, but that is the beginning. That is not the end. You're going to hear from Eric today, and he's going to talk about EdReports, a tool that's now available, that's free and available to be used, and it's awesome. This isn't about EdReports. I mean, there are other ways, and even if you think EdReports is awesome and you use EdReports, there's still a huge amount of work you have to do in still selecting the materials that you're going to be using locally. And others say, wow, this really isn't a new idea. And I agree, this is not a new idea. But we still have materials out there in the hands of teachers that are low quality and are not aligned to our standards. So we need to keep working until we make sure that every single teacher and every single student have access to the good stuff. And some people have asked me, is this the most important thing? Well, I think it's pretty important, but I think there's a lot of other really important things to do. Social emotional learning, all of those other important aspects of what we do as a profession and as teachers is really important. But I do think getting our core instructional materials in literacy and mathematics right is really important. And you're going to learn more about why we think that. So as I mentioned, we see this as the next step in standards implementation. It took us a little while to get here. It's time we get this in line. It took the publishers a while to get on board and get us some good stuff out there, but this is the next step in standards implementation. And it is a continuous improvement strategy that's showing promise. And there's data around the state, there's research around the country that is showing that this is an important place to put your efforts. This is support for local implementation. We're going to give you some tools, we're going to give you some information to help you make the best choices you can possibly make for your own community. The bar that we want to set is a common definition of quality that we want to share across the state of Wisconsin. And then we want you to pick from the good quality stuff. And again, we want to make sure teachers have the stuff that they deserve to have so they can be their very best selves. And we want to free up time that teachers are spending searching all over for the right stuff so that they can be focusing their time on the rest of the millions of things that teachers need to be focusing on. And I will not mince words. This is an important equity strategy for us. We already know across the state of Wisconsin, there is inequitable access to the best instructional materials. So we need to make sure that not only do we have equal access, making sure that we're doing some things so that the kids that need us the most have the best stuff. So one of the pieces of research that you'll see is that this is a strategy that's good for all teachers. All teachers benefit from having the best stuff, and all kids benefit from the best stuff. But do you know who benefits the most? Teachers that are brand new, teachers that are teaching on an emergency license, substitute teachers, teachers that are struggling for whatever reason. They benefit the most. And you know what else we know? We have data in Wisconsin that says that our students of color and our poor students are disproportionately have a chance of having one of those teachers standing in front of them. So make no mistake about it, this is an important equity strategy for us. So as we go into today, I want you to know that we have been working for almost a full year in reaching out and talking to educators about what we've been learning and asking them to be learning with us. I want to give a quick shout out to our 3 largest urban districts. We have small teams from Madison, Milwaukee, and Green Bay that have chosen to join this journey with us and have been learning along with us and giving us incredible feedback and asking great questions and helping us to formulate this strategy. It's been amazing. We have done what we call empathy interviews across the state, where we've literally talked to stakeholders all across the state, and the goal was to listen to them and to help us learning about this strategy. We've had feedback sessions with all of our education stakeholders across the state, and we've contracted with RAND that did some surveying of our teachers. And I'm gonna actually show you one piece of results that we got just last week from that RAND survey data. And we were able to contract with CPRL at Columbia University to do focus groups across the state. And we have some great feedback and information from educators through that. So we are listening. Today is another day of listening for us. We're gonna give you some information and we're gonna listen to the feedback that you give back to us, and we're really excited to hear what you have to say. And with the opportunity to hear what you have to say, we have the debut of a new video that contains the voices of some of our educators across the state.
Our teachers are the heart and the soul of this work. That they are the magic. And yet we know that materials can provide the ingredients and can set the stage for teachers to work their magic.
Materials matter. They do. Really important that we have material that is aligned to the common standards. If we're going to increase students' learning, that needs to be kind of the foundation of that, right? I think it's also really important that all teachers in a grade level are teaching the same curriculum.
I've taught where we've had like silos. Each teacher would teach a different subject, and going through kindergarten through 12th grade, because each teacher had a different agenda. And so having state standards be part of our curriculum makes it a lot easier for us to teach.
If students are not given grade level materials and resources, then all we're doing is remediating. I know no teacher wants to see kids continue to fail.
Ensuring that kids have access to high quality instructional materials at grade level, and either extending, if need be, for advanced learners, or providing the scaffolds and supports for those kids who need it, so that our kids really are community, college, career ready without high quality instruction. Obviously, coupled with instructional materials, our kids have a much harder time and much less likely outcome of actually meeting those goals and outcomes that we hold for all of our kids.
Piece of the work was around just professional development, around what's out there, what does high quality mean, what are the things that we're looking for. I think sometimes teachers and administrators, right, they don't know where the gaps exist in materials.
We've had material where they said that they were according to the state standards, but then you find out at the assessment level that you are definitely missing some holes.
When we discovered from looking at the standards in our previous curriculum that there were holes. They weren't matching up. We were spending hours and hours and hours trying to align it to the standards. That was a painstakingly slow process. So I think when you choose a curriculum that is already aligned, it really saves teachers time so that they can then use that time for more important things like preparing for lessons.
The way I've seen it look and work the best is in a PLC format. So you have a professional learning community that gets together and looks at the materials that you're using, the materials that you're planning on using in the future. What is my instruction going to look like? What did my kids struggle with? What did I struggle with? And then just talk those things through about how are we going to get through whatever glitches may be happening as we're implementing these materials.
And as a leader, I want to know exactly how do I support you. First, understand what the needs are, and working with teachers on identifying what do they consider to be high quality instructional materials. We're coming to them as the experts, and they are providing us with the necessary information that we need to help them make informed decisions.
Getting your teachers involved in that process and getting that buy-in right away, I think really is powerful.
So really, having high quality instructional materials is really essential for everyone, and it is most essential for our students who need us the most, who haven't had the conditions set for them or prepared for them to really take advantage of setting the stage for a life of options, which is what all of our kids deserve.
Thank you so much to our educators in Wisconsin that were willing to step up and talk about what they've been learning and what they've been doing around this topic. What a great job. So this video will become available on our website for you to share and to be able to use in your work as well. So I mentioned the RAND survey. Again, this was about 771 educators across the state answered just this one question. What's the most important thing that you need to support your students? And you can see right here, the number one thing they said they need is curriculum and instructional materials that are rigorous and engaging. And they were given a choice of several things to choose from. They also had other. So if they thought something completely different was the most important thing, they could choose that. And so we know this is what educators are asking for and they need. A couple more quotes from our focus groups. We need to do a better job vertically aligning content so we aren't shorting our kids. Trying to get all of our curriculum to align would take us hours and hours for teachers. This is an interesting one. I work in districts with a variety of approaches to curriculum, but I prefer if teachers create their own so we can be sure it's good. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more today because we do want to make sure it's good. And I'm interested to hear how you know it's good if you're creating it yourself. So that was a great insight out in the field that we want to address today. I would say it's the ongoing piece of the professional development and support of what we're actually using in the classrooms that's probably the best that I've seen. So that shift of the PD on the use of the materials. And then again about the importance of PD. With the writing curriculum, to have someone come in again as a follow-up, I think is just crucial versus just seeing someone at the beginning of the year and you get that, they train you and then you never see them again. And it's like you have to walk it and live it and then you have more questions and more needs. So I feel like having someone come in multiple times around that PD, and I agree with that one. For me, it's always how do you get the highest quality resources that both build capacity of the teacher and the quality of the instructional design in the classroom without tying a teacher's hands, stifling or dimming the art, because ultimately a curriculum is a piece of paper. And we agree with that. Our teachers are really important in this. All right, we're gonna show you some data. Do I need to refresh it? We're going to show you some data that you guys put in today. So we're going to take a minute to try and tie the whole state together. You answered several questions, but we're going to just look at three. We're going to look at three charts. Jake put them in, but I think we're going to have to shut it down and we're going to have to bring it back up to refresh it so that the charts show up. And we'll see what you guys think around the state. So you did many questions just to reflect on your own, but we're going to take a look just at three of the questions here. Okay, So the best way to ensure that instructional materials are of high quality and aligned to standards is to develop them yourself. So we heard somebody said that across the state, and it looks like about half of the people attending today disagree with that. About 16% strongly disagree that the best way to do this is to create your own. And then strongly agree is that tiny little sliver. 9% of folks agree, just like that coach said, the way I know that it's good stuff is I make it myself, or the teachers make it themselves. About 25% are neutral on that. All right, let's look at two more. Ensuring that all teachers have access to high quality instructional materials is an effective strategy for promoting equity. So we've got 43% agree, we've got 48% strongly agree, we got some people that are neutral, and we got a teeny little sliver that strongly disagree that this is an equity strategy. So we'll see how we feel after today. All right, and then let's look at number 8. Schools are responsible for ensuring all teachers have access to high quality instructional materials and effective job embedded professional learning. So it looks like vast majority, 64%, I guess that's not vast, the majority think that yes, indeed, they strongly agree with that. 32% agree, and then we've got a tiny sliver of people that are neutral, disagree, or strongly disagree. So today we are going to spend some time talking through how we're going to make that happen. But right now, it is your turn to talk. So we are going to cut away to the local sites to facilitate our first on-site table discussions.